Hello, everybody, and welcome to our next IT Masters and Charles Sturt University short course. This one is going to be on ransomware techniques. So welcome everybody from everywhere in the world that you are all tuning in from. And hello to those of you who are watching this back as a recording as well. My name is Jack. I am a course consultant as well as the short course MC at IT Masters. And we are joined today by Kit, who is our wonderful tech support person, who is going to be doing some back end things and maintaining the chat, keeping everything running smoothly, as well as our fantastic host, Jeremy Costa, who is a fantastic cybersecurity and information professional with over 20 years of experience and a well-respected lecturer with IT Masters and CSU for over a decade, who we'll introduce in just a moment. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get completely started with everything. You will see down the bottom of your Zoom window. Jeremy will reshare the screen when possible. You'll see down the beginning of your Zoom window that you have both a chat and a Q&A function. We like to keep the chat, first of all, make sure that you set the recipients of your chat to everyone in order to communicate with all of the other participants as well as the host and panelists. We keep the chat is used primarily for comments on the course content that you would like to make to everyone in the course, not necessarily requesting an answer or a response from our mentor, Jeremy. If you do have a question, because we will be taking Q&As throughout, we'll be taking questions throughout the evening or the other time of day, as the case may be. If you do have a question for Jeremy about the course content specifically, please put that in the Q&A section and keep the chat to those comments to the other participants. Or if you have questions about the logistics of things, if you would like to know details about IT Masters and such, keep that to the chat function and Kit and I will do our best to answer those. You can find all of the course materials, so the readings, the recordings of the lectures, as well as everything else that is uploaded on learn.itmasters.edu.au. That's where you'll find your forums, all of the recordings, all of the readings, links, etc., as well as just a couple of things happening on the screen there, as well as the discussion forum. So if you don't get your question answered in our Q&A sessions, because they are a bit limited due to time, we would really like to encourage you to take those to the forums and discuss them with your mentor, Jeremy, as well as the other participants. And that is, once again, learn.itmasters.edu.au. And as well as that, Kit is on hand to help out with technical issues as well. And before we begin as well, the content of the session specifically, I would like to first acknowledge that we are coming to you today from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the sovereign custodians of these lands for several thousand generations. Pay respect to their elders and ancestors, and acknowledge that their sovereignty was never ceded. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jeremy Costa, who is our host and mentor for today. Take it away, Jeremy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much, Jack. And I'll start my video so you can see me and get a better experience to listening to a lecture for an hour in whatever time zone you're in. But for most of us, the Australians, it is after work, and hopefully that makes it a little bit more interesting, a bit more engaging. So thank you, everyone, for coming in and joining us for this course, this 4-week course. I'm really excited about it. The idea is for me that this is a major challenge for the cybersecurity industry, for IT, for business in general, for government, for society in going digital, and we need to be able to respond, and we need to be able to educate each other and ourselves on how we protect against this sort of thing. So that's why we're doing this short course, and to give you a teaser for what a master's course will be like with IT Masters as well, because it's a great way to learn and to get a master's degree, and you get access to quite a few different people giving these sorts of lectures and these sorts of courses. So going on, just to introduce myself, I am, as Jack said, Jeremy Costa. I've been in cybersecurity for 20 years. Before that, I was doing IT support, desktop support, server support, network support. So I came from a technical background, and I continue to try and keep as technical as I can, even though cybersecurity is not purely a technical problem. I've got a number of qualifications. I've done a couple of degrees, and I have, you know, in the old days, I did SANS, GCIH, and GPEN, that sort of thing. Also, the CISSP and CISM, and a whole some Cisco ones over the period of time. So I've kept up to date with that sort of thing. But my real passion is to make sure organizations are able to be protected against cybersecurity attacks, and to be able to, you know, and allow people to use computers in a safe and secure manner, and be able to protect our information. And a lot of that is going on. A lot of that is going on in the press at the moment, particularly in Australia, with a fair few breaches that impact a lot of us. So it's important to be able to educate and help each other to be protected and use computers and information technology securely. As my experience, I've come from a telco background. So funnily enough, and considering that Optus is in the headlines, I did work at Optus for some time. I have no insight about this particular issue. It was about, I think I was there maybe 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago now. So that is certainly where I cut my teeth in security as an information security specialist, and then later at Vodafone and at TPG as information security manager, and now at a fairly large university environment as a chief information security officer. I've dealt with a lot of incidents over my period of time, and I've been watching ransomware for quite some time, and I've been watching it come from something that affects just one computer at a time to affecting an entire networked environment in a corporate. So I'm really fascinated about how this has been going, and it was clear at some stage to me that it was just going to get worse and worse. The fact is that the cyber criminals are making a huge amount of money this way, and so my experience has kind of led me to really research and understand ransomware, because I am very intent on protecting the organizations that I work for from such an incident as well, because it's not just an IT cost, but also a personal cost. And as Jack said, I've been lecturing for IT Masters for over 10 years. I've been building courses for them in different sort of areas of security and incident response and in pen testing. So I'm used to presenting in this manner. I've done a couple of short courses before. Go check out the pen testing short course. That's one I've most recently done before this one. But onto the topic. So this ransomware problem is really the scourge of modern IT, and I think that it gets a lot of interest in the news. It affects big business, and it is big business itself. It is making, you know, depending on which report you listen to, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It is making organizations think differently about security, and it is becoming a stress for organizational leaders, and it's accelerating. Anywhere that a criminal organization is making money is only going to fund more of that activity. So they are the cybersecurity landscape in the area of ransomware, and the threat landscape is expanding rapidly. There are more techniques for getting into organizations and locking them up. There are more actors trying to do that. It is becoming commoditized. So there's layers. There is access brokers. There are people who buy and sell access into organizations so they can be ransomed. So it is a thriving market, excuse me, and a thriving economy. And also it comes alongside business email compromise. So, you know, in a lot of, while ransomware gets the big headlines, there is also cybersecurity issues in our way we use email and the way we do pay invoices and the way we transfer money in digital systems. That business email compromise is also depending on the report you read, but $1 billion industry as well. So these are two major streams of revenue for cyber criminals that have come about over the last 6 or 7 years, and really they have matured. And I wonder where it's going to go next. So why are we here now? Why is ransomware such a big deal now? Well, as we'll go through this course, we'll talk about different ways in which ransomware gets into an environment, how it spreads in an organization, how we can detect it, and how we can protect ourselves from it. We will be going through the different stages. And I think the reason why that ransomware is such a big problem now is because the enterprise organizations have been built similarly across the globe. So they've got an Active Directory, they have a perimeter system, and they have similar ways of using technology. Every environment is different. Every environment needs different security technologies and different security controls to protect it. But a lot of the techniques are similar in getting into an organization, spreading in an organization, and locking them up. Now that's come about because I think we've been fortunate up to now that there's been so many environments out there on the internet. Our interconnectivity has grown, and the way in which we deal with like our internal IT systems are now going outside into the cloud, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to do and can be done very securely, but it means we're just that more interconnected. So that's why it's a bit of a confluence of all those things together, making ransomware profitable and getting the cyber criminals the money that they want. Now, a principle I'd like to bring out is prevention is better than cure. So I have been in environments where there has been an attempt to break in, and you want to be able to identify it at that stage before they actually do get in. You want to be able to, and if they do get in, clean it up quickly and get them out as fast as possible. So that's once they get a foothold, you're in a race against time. So the prevention of ransomware is better than the cure. The cure is to remediate afterwards, to clean up that mess, or all the other things that come with it, with auditing, with investigations, even with law enforcement. So very important to consider prevention. This is the principle I'd like people to consider as we go through this course, is that all the things we could do beforehand to prevent the ransomware from taking hold in your organization. Now, the history of ransomware is pretty interesting. 1980, we had the AIDS Trojan. It's one of the first. There are some other kind of ransomware-y sort of extortion software, but essentially these are screenshots of this ransomware. They typically like red. It's quite shocking when it pops up on the screen, so it gives a bit of an emotive response. But essentially, the AIDS Trojan was on a floppy disk. When you loaded it up, it actually asked you to send $189 via snail mail to a PO box, and then they would send you back the decryption key. So that was the first time where we actually had a kind of a service model for this sort of ransomware. In 2010, so a fair bit later, we had Winlock. It actually requested that it didn't actually lock up or encrypt files. It actually just stopped access and replaced it with inappropriate images. And if you wanted to get back to where you were, you had to SMS at a premium number, which costs you $10, and they'd send you back the decryption key. So this is another way of making their money. And then we had CryptoLocker in 2013 start, and that started to do the Bitcoin payment. So Bitcoin came onto the scene. It was the way in which these criminal enterprises started making money. Then we had WannaCry, which is not actually very good ransomware, and it was an interesting ploy. It actually not only infected one computer, but would break out and try to infect as many as possible on public IP range. And we had the malware researcher. He managed to defang it and stop it in its tracks, which was very interesting as well, by registering a DNS address, and that stopped it, because that was a kind of an effective kill switch in WannaCry. But it used Eternal Blue vulnerability, which is a vulnerability that was identified allegedly by the NSA, was leaked to the shadow brokers somehow, which were a Russian group, and then used by allegedly by the North Koreans in WannaCry. So we start to see some of this global kind of interaction and people grabbing hold of this idea of ransomware. The whole WannaCry thing was that it actually spread really heavily. Then in June 2017, not long afterwards, because not everyone had been able to patch for Eternal Blue because it just had come out, this vulnerability in Microsoft Windows. It was a very simple way to load software onto Windows via a direct approach, right? So it was quite significant. It was used also in Petya Not Petya, and allegedly this is from an initial attack on Ukraine from Russia, which we're very familiar with these days. But in those days, it was trying to disrupt but it went further. It went much further. It went and impacted a lot of organizations, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but also some Russian organizations as well. So there was a financial package called Amdocs. They packaged WannaCry up in that and delivered it in the software update. So it's an idea about a third-party delivery. That's quite unusual these days. When we hear about ransomware that is affecting a single organization, it's not typically coming through that pathway, but it's one to remember, one to think of. I'm not really sure. There are some protection mechanisms about making sure that your updates are validated, but this would have been hard to protect against in the first instance. Either way, WannaCry, Petya Not Petya, the Not Petya didn't actually encrypt. It actually just encrypted the bootloader. And caused a problem there. So sorry, the file table. So when we're talking about FAT32, the file allocation table, it would encrypt that, but maybe on NTFS, and then you couldn't. It scrambled all the data. So there was no way to actually unlock it, which was a bit terrible actually. These are the different ones, the different notices about ransomware on the way down. So I draw attention to Petya Not Petya. When you see that sort of screen coming up on all the computers around you, very alarming and quite emotive as well. All right, some of the targets. So I talked about Not Petya. Merck and Maersk got done in this spread of ransomware. Now, these numbers here for 870 million and 300 million were not ransoms. Remember, NotPetya was not actually ransoming. It was just destructive, and it actually cost this kind of money to actually fix up. And there's no way to actually understand the full extent of the cost, because there's people costs, there's remediation costs, there's equipment, there's all sorts of costs that come in with this. But that's the estimations that are out there. In March 2019, there was Norsk Hydro, was kind of one of the big corporates really to have a proper ransomware request. They believe that their incident cost them $75 million. That actually stopped their processing of aluminium for a while, and they had to go to manual processes, which is quite a significant impact. How I understand aluminium manufacturing working is that it can't actually stop, or else it takes a long time and very expensive to start it up again. So they had to go to manual processes to keep their aluminium processing going, but also the damage that it did around that was quite significant. In July 2020, Garmin paid 10 million, allegedly, reportedly, All of this, a lot of this is very difficult to verify because it's just what's been reported. And part of ransomware is that it happens behind closed doors. There are organizations that come out and talk about ransomware and talk about what happened. And I encourage everyone to grab hold of those discussions or those podcasts or the reports about ransomware, because the more we share about how this occurs, the better chance we have of actually protecting ourselves against it. There is a dilemma with the ransomware payments. There is, you can be very, and we'll have further discussion about this, but you can be very adamant that you won't pay. But I don't think anyone really knows in a corporate situation or a government situation if you would actually pay when it came to it. And there's some problems with making payment illegal as well. So Garmin paid the 10 million. Then we have Colonial Pipeline, apparently paid 4.4 million. They apparently got a fair bit of that back, but that was another sort of type of ransom. And these are the ones we know about. There's clearly ransomware that is makes the headlines, some that doesn't, the smaller ones that may be able to recover before they have massive damage. They're essentially making a lot of money from this. The sort of gangs and ransomware variants, and it kind of mixes up in some of the reporting, but essentially there's a whole lot of different groups that have now matured into ransomware as a service, this RAAS. So the Hive is like an affiliate ransomware variant, one of these initial ones. Black Cat with Alf V, some Australian victims in that as well. Lapsus we know about, ransom for stolen source code more than locking it up. Ryuk and Conti now, distributed by Russian crime gang. Lockbit, another ransomware as a service. It uses vulnerabilities to break in. And then Darkside, this Russian group, possibly disbanded because they attacked the Colonial Pipeline and got a lot of backlash for that. But this gives you an understanding that there are these groups proliferating and growing, and this issue is not going away, and something has to be done, not only at government level, but individual, corporate and organization level to protect ourselves from these attacks. Who are these guys? So this is all from public reporting. You can see some faces here, but essentially they're guys who are good with a computer, who figure out how to do this sort of thing and perpetrate it from their own bedrooms, to their own organizations. They're stuck together. They are commoditizing, but essentially they're just normal guys who are trying to make a fair bit of money. And why do they do it? Well, because there is lots of cool cars and money that they are after. This is the sort of pictures that some of them have gotten so brazen, they're taking pictures of their purchases that they've made from the proceeds. So this is the sort of thing that they're after. They're just, you only live once. I'm going to ransom somewhere. And I must stress that to a lot of these ransomware actors, we're on the other side of the world, and we are really, if they're targeting organizations in other countries, they're quite faceless. So there are some really very sad and kind of targeting of hospitals, where it's impacted people, targeting of schools where it's impacted young students. Like it's not great that this sort of bottom feeding occurs on the internet, but they are a long way away, and I feel as though they might not see them as real targets. They're not hurting anyone. Some even go to say, well, we're just trying to teach everyone to do a secure thing. We're trying to make them aware of their lack of security so that they can do security better. So we're trying to educate, and I don't buy that at all. It's a criminal activity. It's breaking into an organization. It impacts people, impacts lives. It reduces, quality of life for a lot of people, and stops us from moving ahead. So it is completely not something to get involved in. So how does it all work? So one of the major ways in which a ransomware gang will get into an organization is with compromised credentials. And our password situation on the internet at the moment and in organizations is pretty diabolical. We've pretty much used the same authentication mechanism for systems all the way from routers and servers to workstations, into cloud systems, into applications. It's this username and password. And we have got multi-factor authentication. We'll talk about protection mechanisms, but essentially the world is awash with password dumps. We've had so many password dumps, starting off with, you know, with the big ones that really impacts us, like LinkedIn and Adobe and back in the day, and eBay even, and Ashley Madison back in those days, Yahoo. There's been so many usernames and passwords in the environment like that they can use them to get into certain places. And what you'll see if you've got an Office 365 environment, you'll see credential stuffing. They'll take those password dumps, they'll modify them a little bit, they'll look for some patterns, and they'll try and get into the application or into the environment with passwords. Now, if they're targeting someone, they might be more deliberate and phish passwords off organizations. We've all seen this, where it says, you know, I've shared a file with you, click on this link, it goes to a website that looks like you're logging into Office 365, and you put your username and password in there, and they straight away have it. And if you're using that username password as a single sign-on to other systems, maybe VPN systems or maybe something else, then they can use them as well. But getting that password, that username and password combination, is not so difficult these days. Then we have, so I talked about credential stuffing. Then we talked about using the same password of multiple services. And this is the root of this evil. If we are thinking up a strong password and we think, great, no one's ever gonna guess that. Well, that's true, they won't guess it, but they might actually see it in the clear if someone is not handling that correctly, or they manage to get it from phishing as well. So that's called password recycling. And another item that I haven't mentioned here, but it's very true for this, is things like TrickBot, that are essentially that malware that tries to grab passwords from everywhere. They look for your password history in your browser. They look for a key logging password. So when you're actually typing in passwords, they capture that. They look for when you log into a website, and they scrape that as well. So and tokens in the same way. So there is the credentials that we have, and the ways in which they get them are increasing, and it is becoming increasingly important to protect that as well. When we have credentials, they might be used on Office 365, like I talked about on G Suite. Email is a really interesting one, because when you get into email, in a lot of organizations, there are a lot of links to other services, like resetting of accounts or resetting. We use our email as almost like a base authentication mechanism that allows us access into other systems. When you go to an application, you say forgot password, often they'll just send you an email quickly, and then you can click on and reset your password that way. When someone gets into your email that you use for that service, and a lot of us do that, then that's a way for them to spread into other systems and get more credentials as well. They can be used on VPN entry points. So there's no large organization that doesn't have a VPN of some sort that allows access into the environment to access applications and systems that are local to the organization. And if you can use those credentials on those VPN entry points, then you may then land on the corporate environment, and then they can start to move. They've got that beachhead, they can start to get in there. Remote access systems, a lot of people put RDP, a remote desktop protocol, Citrix and TeamViewer and things like that to be able to access their inside network. So those sorts of gateways are great ways of getting in if you've got credentials and are able to move to the next stage. There has been some cases of TeamViewer, even VNC being used to get inside an organization, implant that malware, and then they've got that stepping stone into the organization. Similarly to remote access with RDP, like the visual remote access, we also have SSH, which is quite regularly open to the internet, but we put username and password on it. Again, using those compromised credentials there, you get a command line into a system, and then that is the pivot point to get somewhere else. Then we have corporate systems that are just applications. So you might have a HR system, or you might have a CRM system, or the content management system that has a username and password prompt for a screen to log in and to modify. If you're able to get into that, then it's quite possible you can get further as another stepping stone into the corporate environment. So these is where the compromised credentials are becoming a key problem, actually being able to understand where your credentials are being used, or where your organization's credentials are being used, and how they might be exposed is really important. Now, not just credentials, but we have perimeter systems that are vulnerable. Now, I see this quite a bit. All of the perimeter systems on organizations that I've worked for have constantly been attacked and probed for vulnerabilities. We've all heard the anecdote that if you put a Windows 95 machine or a Windows XP machine on the internet that is unpatched, it'll be compromised in a couple of minutes. This sort of thing does happen, and there is a need to keep an eye on what is external to your organization and accessible from countries in Europe and across the world, right? So having an understanding of that perimeter is really important. The VPN gateways are a great way for them to get in again. There was one big one called Pulse Secure, which ended up in, I believe, I think the Travelex ransomware, where they were able to get through in a lot of different ways. I think Fortinet's had a few, Palo Alto's had a few. They've all had some sort of vulnerability that allows a gateway into the organization, and they need to be patched just like anything else and monitored. Citrix servers have had some significant vulnerabilities. You don't need credentials, you get in there. RDP has vulnerabilities as well. These are software vulnerabilities that bypass the authentication. And that is a great way for ransomware to get that first step into the organization. We have web servers. We had PHP's had lots of things. Apache's had lots. WordPress has had lots, typically not in corporate, but maybe for a smaller organization hosting their own WordPress, keeping that up to date is very important. We've seen Log4Shell go through this year, where we had to scramble to figure out where our environments were actually vulnerable to Log4Shell. We didn't see the full Armageddon we expected from that, but there is, there is still a lot of Log4Shell out there within corporations that attackers can make use of once they get into the corporate environment. So we still have to continue to clean up and patch and remediate those systems. Once they have access to a web server, they commonly put a web shell on, which gives them basically a toolkit. A web shell is like a Swiss Army knife on a web server that you can perform lots of commands, do scanning, do local commands on the command line, and be able to move into the organization that way and probe inside on the other side of the web server. So those web shells have been diabolical in the past as well. And all this is to pivot into the corporate. So the ransomware attacker is outside. They're looking for a way to get onto a perimeter system and then pivot into the corporate environment. And that is the sweet spot. And we'll be going through over the next couple of weeks what happens once they get into that sweet spot and why that is possible these days. Now, there are two perimeters in an organization. There is an internet perimeter where all the systems are sitting there waiting for connections from other systems from around the globe, and they are reachable from from the UK, from Russia, from Germany, from Africa, from anywhere. So if you've got an internet connection, you can get to these services. That is the beauty of the internet. There is another perimeter, the perimeter of email addresses, perimeter of people, the people who sit here looking at, in an organization, looking at an inbox like this person. If you can, like this inbox here, if you can email someone from across the globe, you are able to get them to do something. And I want to introduce you to Emotet. Emotet is basically like the access broker for ransomware. So it's been very successful and has many different variations over time. But essentially, it did try to steal initially. I think initially just identified in 2014, similar. So it's been around for a while, used to just try and grab credentials, but now it's more of a conduit for other ransomware or other malware coming down. TrickBot uses Emotet, and you can see this is a bit of a commodity market. If you've got someone who's an Emotet or a malware kind of as a service provider, they can sell what access they have to a ransomware operator who can come in then and deliver TrickBot and deliver their ransomware of choice that way. So Emotet is this first step in. It's the thing you want to discover, and it's got some good capability of actually hiding from malware and turning off security services and mutating itself and being really clever. So we need to be aware of that and try to stop that from occurring. Sort of campaigns that might come through, we've seen some recent ones, like you've got a missing wallet, open up this document, which is an Excel file. You're going through a termination, open up the document to see what that is. You're getting a pay rise. This is an invoice. You can see these are all kind of triggers for people who are waiting for something. If you do actually wait for that, they hit someone who's actually waiting for termination papers, which can happen. And if they're delivering heavily and to millions of inboxes, it could actually make it to someone. They'll click on it. They'll even in knowing about phishing, they might actually open the document. And once they open the document, they actually get a malicious JavaScript runs, and then it starts to download the next part of Emotet. So it's got the stub there, the JavaScript runs, Emotet comes down and installs itself. Then we have you know, sometimes it's delivered, the Word and Excel files are delivered in a protected format so that it can't be scanned by antivirus and things like that. So once it gets in, they provide the password, you open up the Excel file, and all of a sudden you're infected. It can also be delivered by OneDrive URL or a Dropbox URL or a Box URL, and you know, in a zip file format as well. And recently they've been using XLL files, which are a type of XML file, a type of Excel file that is able to install the malware as well. So this is the conduit for the next step. So we want to get this early. This is where they interact with people and trick them into installing this bit of malware that leads to the next bit. And the really bad thing is internal phishing as well. So when someone gets credentials and gets into an organization, they can get a high click rate if they send from a trusted person. They might go through sent items, and I've seen that where they'll go through the sent items of a mailbox and they'll resend to a big group about some sort of similar topic, you know, so this project's going on and it's to the whole project team. So they might send another email reply all saying, here's the latest project plan or project budget for this project, please open it. And then because they've got an insider email address, it looks trusted, and it also doesn't necessarily get scanned for viruses as well. So it's a good way to deliver it. So this is another way they can get it in. And then what I've seen as well in the industry not so long ago is actually the deliberate placement of interesting files. So if you work for, say, a big bank, let's call it ABC Bank, and you want to see ABC salaries. So I've seen some documents planted on compromised WordPress sites. So mum and dad WordPress site, mum and dad business WordPress sites. So small business don't keep their WordPress up to date. Some cyber criminal guy gets into that WordPress site and they put in a document that says ABC salary.xls, right? And then it gets, they promote it to get searched by Google. When someone in that organization or another organization goes and searches for that document, they see, hey, that's strange, I'll download that, comes up in a Google search, they open it up and there's Emotet and the JavaScript runs and they're in trouble. So there is some really diabolical things like that. It's a really very much phishing where they're baiting you on the internet and hoping someone will pick it up. Now, if you can imagine doing that en masse, you might do thousands of these documents just sitting there in a directory with a word list of companies and a sensational name behind them. So ABC salaries or the plumber such and such corporation, building corporation projects for 2024, something that people might actually look for could come down. So very diabolical and things to look forward to, but don't be discouraged. It's it's really we'll talk about the protection now, but it might be a good time just to take some questions.
Absolutely. We can definitely do that. So thank you so much so far. This is absolutely fascinating / terrifying. Hopefully we'll all feel quite empowered by the end of this short course rather than afraid, as I'm currently feeling. But we've got a question from Doug, who's asked, can you distinguish between the ransom attacks we've seen recently and ransomware, which I imagine is kind of, the question is somewhat about, is there a difference between a general, just is any software that's used to perform a ransom, is that ransomware, or is there specific characteristics of the software itself?
Yeah, so there is the ransom that has been happening recently in Australia, and I think that's what Doug might be referring to with Optus and with Medibank, and also there's one more that is out there, but the Optus one's very strange. Asking for $1 million. That is essentially it's extortion. So the ransoming saying, I'm going to expose this data unless you give me money. There was no software delivered in that. There was no ransomware, like the word for it. There was no malware that actually moved through our environment, denied access, or caused damage. So this is purely just keeping or extracting data and using that to extort an organization, similar to what's happening with Medibank. I believe they managed to not. They managed to stop it. Apparently, we don't get too much information out of this, but from what we can see in the press even today, they turned off their systems. They thought they had contained it, but it looks like that maybe they hadn't, and the data did get out. So this is an extortion attempt, saying that give us some money or we'll release it to everyone. I think it's pretty hard to be confident, even if the money was given, that it wouldn't be exposed to everyone or used in a different way or sold off individually. It's a really awful situation. But it's an interesting point, because there is this term of the double threat, or the double extortion of ransomware, where they lock up your entire organization's systems, stop you from doing your business, cause millions of dollars of outage kind of opportunity cost, but also then say you've got to pay the ransom, or because we extracted all the data before we locked it up, and if you don't pay the ransom, we will expose all that data as well. So it's a double threat to that ransom, and it actually changes the conversation about paying the ransom. It means that and it's a diabolical way of doing it, because it means that the organization might say, well, for the safety of those people, we thought we'd try to get the data back, so we paid the ransom. And it's really an awful way of doing it. And it's sincerely bottom feeding from the I guess from the criminals perspective as well. So it's so there is some distinction there between that sort of ransomware. There is mainstream ransomware, like the Conti and Ryuk, and the dark side, the ransomware as a service. That stuff someone can pick up and start using. But that's different to what's happening in the press at the moment.
Right, fantastic.
That.
Yeah, that is that's really interesting. Sam has asked if state actors are common in terms of ransomware sources.
Yeah, so it's hard to know definitively if state actors are active in ransomware. In some states, like North Korea, there has been, I think the Lazarus group has been active in some ransomware, apparently. Maybe the Sony ransomware back in the day, where they were holding kind of movies at ransom, and PlayStation had a bit of an issue as well, I believe. But I think there is a difference between nation state and turning a blind eye as well. So they're actually paying groups to go and extort companies. It's possible and quite likely. But in some cases, the originating government, the country or the government of the country where the ransomware is originating from may just turn a blind eye and say, look, we will let you operate with impunity as long as you don't target us, you know, that sort of thing. Maybe I think the NotPetya is a bit more of a different case. They weren't after ransom, they were after destruction, and that seems less like a ransomware gang, more like something else that was a bit more state funded. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So not necessarily state actors, but state sort of under the radar type of people. That makes absolute sense. I will just take a moment to reiterate what Kit has just popped in the chat, which is please do be wary of any links that are currently being posted in the chat. No links that are posted in the chat that are not posted by the official IT Masters team. That is myself, Kit, or Jeremy, are endorsed by IT Masters, and we can't recommend that anybody click on any external links. The next, which I think will go nicely to your next slide, but we've got a couple more questions. Someone's asked how one would monitor and protect APIs, which may be covered later on in the course.
Yeah, and I think again this is another Optus question, and it comes down to an old saying, I think, defense in depth and thinking about defense in layers. Now, I'm not familiar precisely what happened in Optus. I see the news like everyone else does, and I've seen the discussion around the Optus hacker with the terrific reporter Jeremy Costa, who's done a great job in talking about a lot of, and talking about this incident. I think I wouldn't try to provide advice directly for the Optus thing, but for APIs in general, I think we do need to be careful because of this cloud kind of age where we're heading into, where we are moving everything out of local data centers into the cloud. A lot of the applications that we now are plumbing together are plumbing from cloud to cloud, and we're just using APIs between them. And we have to be really careful about layers of security that are protective, even if one of the layers doesn't work properly or fails at the time. So when we're talking about access to the internet, the risk is extreme. We need to think about not just API keys, but maybe IP restriction, which is difficult in cloud as well because of dynamic nature. Talking about maybe even encryption beyond the API of the data underneath, so it's not able to be accessed that way. And the big picture, and the one we'll be discussing a lot in the fourth week, is around monitoring itself. So understanding what normal looks like for an API in terms of traffic, and what an attack looks like for an API for traffic. So understanding that one of those control mechanisms might have failed, you need to be able to monitor that and understand why that's happened, so that it ends up on someone's screen, it ends up with someone investigating it, and they're able to limit damage. There is no perfect security, and we've got a long way to go before we are impervious to this sort of stuff. And it can happen to any organization who is putting services on the internet. But it's a matter of defense in depth and using the security controls that we have at our disposal to make sure these systems stay secure. I hope that answered the question.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We've got a couple of questions about protection. The first is, does cloud infrastructure offer any better protection against malicious attacks?
Yeah, it depends on what you're talking about. Some cloud infrastructure could just be set up like a normal data center. So infrastructure as a service, or even just VM virtual machines in a cloud environment, are very much like local data centers, where if an attacker gets in there and they have credentials to all of it through, say, Active Directory, which we'll be talking about a lot, it will make no difference if it's the cloud or if it's local. If we're talking about kind of cloud native or serverless, and we're talking about applications or software as a service, those sorts of things, then you can start to buffer yourself against a ransomware just targeting your organization with the underlying infrastructure, because you have a large cloud provider doing the security for the organization of the underlying infrastructure there. Now, there are gains there, gains because you're kind of, what's the word, running with the crowd or flying with the flock, safety in numbers. But they also have to do the right thing by everyone as well. So we have seen some big organizations having, some cloud organizations having breached, and there will be some in the future. It doesn't necessarily give you absolute protection, but I believe that the way that cloud is done, they have got a lot of resources for security and can sometimes, more often than not, do much better with security than what you might be able to do with a local team with your own system. So you can leverage that and use the cloud in a secure way on their secure systems. But again, no perfect security. It's a constant vigilance, constant monitoring, and constant work to keep them all secure.
Great, thank you. Comprehensive. And just before I think we might wrap up this Q&A session, this section, do you have any advice, for a company that's actually been hit by ransomware? What kind of very general courses of action are there? And a similar question, is it advisable to pay the ransom should one be the victim of ransomware?
Yeah, we'll cover that in later sessions, the payment option. It's quite complex because it comes down to individual situation. Also, insurance plays a part as well. So we'll cover that off when we are going further into the ransomware story. And the first question was around the advice for if they are being ransomed at the moment. Yeah, we'll get to that as well in later sessions. We'll talk about kind of the first the first 5 hours of being infected and what you need to do to try and save things and scrape together an environment that you can recover. Yeah, but I won't answer them now because they're actually topics we cover.
Fantastic. So courses of action and what to do if you've been ransomware attacked.
Yeah,
We'll cover in the future. Fantastic.
Yep.
Feel free to continue on.
Yeah, great. Okay, so for each of these live sessions, I'm going to be talking about the stage of ransomware. We've talked about initial infection. We talked about getting a beachhead, getting a presence in the organization, how they actually penetrate in. The protection measures for that I'll be going through. Next week, we'll be talking about lateral movement, how to protect against that, and then on so on and so on. So this, the first thing I want to talk about is credential protection. We talked about passwords first, that first line of defense. We need strong passwords, right? So weak passwords, easily guessed passwords, top 100, using one of the top 100 passwords, blank passwords will inevitably be guessed. If they're exposed to the internet, they will be guessed and they will be accessed. There's just no question that will happen. So you need strong passwords that can't be guessed. We still, it's passwords are failing us, but we need to keep them strong. We need to vary our passwords. So the only really easy way to do that, or kind of useful way to do that these days, is have a password manager. And it sometimes does feel right to put all the passwords in one system so that you manage all the other systems. It's almost like that Genesis email address I'm talking about before, where you access, if you access that email address, you can get access to all the other applications through password reset. Well, but the password manager is a much better way to do that, so that it can generate random passwords for you and you can manage them that way. And that is a more, I think, a more secure way of doing it. Then you can put multi-factor authentication on that password manager. You can tie it into a hardware token. You can do things that are a higher level of security. The things that also you need to do as an organization is understand if your credentials have been exposed. So understanding if you've got a domain, you've got corporate email addresses or organizational email addresses that have actually been exposed in a data breach, you need something like a monitoring tool like Have I Been Pwned, or there are some other commercial ones that will actually, and government ones actually. So the government does this for some organizations, and to actually let you know when their credentials have been exposed. Organizations like OzCert do it as well. And they'll give you these credentials when they see them on an exposed site or a dark net site or something like that. So there's these services that you can run to understand which accounts might be at risk. Okay, so understanding all of that is really important, being able to monitor for those exposed accounts. The other thing to do is offboarding. Some organizations don't do a great job of getting rid of accounts once they have the organizations have left the employment. So they need to be able to keep their attack surface of these accounts as small as possible. So when someone, an account isn't used for 6 months, maybe there's even less, maybe disable it. If as soon as someone leaves the organization, the password is disabled, and not only the account is disabled, maybe the password is changed as well. So it's you know, even if it accidentally gets enabled, it's not the same password, it's a random one. So there's this idea of offboarding, keeping the hygiene of accounts as small as possible. Think about this not just for your mainstream systems, but also for the administrative systems. Maybe the cloud admin is a classic example. You've got a software as a service, but you've got an admin portal to manage that, or infrastructure as a service. That portal there, making sure that people who leave the organization don't have access still. Also making sure that you're using an SSO so that offboarding is easy. You turn it off in one place, you turn it off everywhere. Obviously, you need to do that in a secure manner as well. So that account cleanup, that offboarding, making sure your credentials are secure, and then also monitoring. We will cover monitoring as its own topic. It's so important for protecting an organization. I'm taking it out of these protection measures and putting it in detection measures that we'll cover off in week 4. So this is important, these protection systems happen. Multi-factor authentication is heralded as one of the best security improvements you can make in an organization. Anything that is on your perimeter, anything that is accessible from the other side of the world should have MFA on the system, okay? So even something that isn't super sensitive, you know, you should be starting, if you're rolling out MFA to systems, rolling it out to applications, start with your Office 365s, start with your finance, start with your HR, then move to the other applications, your CRM, the stuff that doesn't have as much sensitive information, but roll it out in a way that protects the assets first. There are some things. Email verification is not great for MFA. Location-based MFA is pretty good, but also can be thwarted as well. I'm not talking about geolocation. I'm more talking about authentication from on-premise, so you have to be physically there or VPN'd in to be able to access something. That's a good, that's basically putting something behind the perimeter. Putting it behind the VPN is kind of like doing location MFA, only allowing it from certain IP addresses. SMS MFA has got some problems. It's okay, but we've got a problem with SIM swapping and other telco redirecting of SMS. That is an issue. Still, as a basic, it's better than nothing, but really we're starting to push towards authenticator, one-time passwords, or authenticator push. Both of these are interesting. One-time password and push can still be intercepted as you're logging in through a proxy, so there's some risks there, but there's also some ways in which they can bug you. With the push there's been cases where attackers have just hit the push. They've got the username and password. They do 10 of them until someone says, all right, it's malfunctioning, I'll say yes. So they annoy them into saying yes and allowing them through. So there are some, it is not perfect, but is a long way to making it difficult for the attackers, and they need some additional techniques. And obviously we're moving to YubiKey FIDO style MFA, where it's a hardware token that will allow you to you know, make sure it's present with you to be used, and it's got some higher security in place as well. So MFA, big one to use. Email filtering, URL rewriting is a big one. This is a good protection mechanism. I think the likes of Mimecast and the other one starting with P and I'm not endorsing any systems. ATP Proofpoint, thank you. Saw that some of those will do that URL rewriting as you're coming in, as an email coming into the email environment. Before it lands in someone's inbox, they take the URL, they rewrite it so it goes through a proxy first. So if in the case of the Microsoft ATP, it'll come through the proxy first, and it will be inspected. The actual location will be inspected, and if it's clean, then it goes. If they decide that it's not so clean, it gets blocked. Now, that is only as good as the signature or the analysis engine. We have seen phishing crews use legitimate services like, you know, Microsoft services or Dropbox services or WeTransfer and stuff like that that look safe, but they are downloading a file from there. So sometimes you have to block URLs that are leading to major services as well. So that's an interesting one. That's how the URL rewriting works. But obviously, you need good spam filters. Grey listing is good. This is where the mail system will say if it gets a mail from someone who it hasn't seen before to someone who has been sent from that person before, it will say temporary failure, come back later, and that actually pushes a lot of that sort of spamming engines away. SPF DKIM, making sure that email is coming from the organization you expect it. We should be getting a lot harder on that. That's been in for a while. DMARC is important, so you can see who is imitating you and making sure that that is not happening, so no one's sending in your name across the internet. So everyone should be deploying that just for other people's sake as well. And then the link rewrite proxying, it's not perfect, it does add delays. It does keep a good record of visits. So what happens with this is when a phishing email comes in and it's really well written one and 20 people click in 5 minutes, you'll actually see that in the system and be able to respond and react, either send someone to the person or do a virus scan or ask them, did you actually download, what's happened? So you can actually respond that way and claw back some of the activity that's taken. And good if the blacklist is current, right? So if they have got a good blacklist and the phishing link is already in there, it's been used somewhere else, then it might get put in for, you might not be the first attacked, and it might already have a bad reputation and be blocked. Also give you you also need a purge capability sometimes overnight. Sometimes there's a major phishing attack. It gets reported into the spam drop box. You realize it's gone to 500 staff. You have a purge capability ready to actually lift that out of inboxes so that people coming in the morning don't get it. And then finally, proxies. So being able to see where people are visiting from the corporate network, if they're going to those ransomware sites that you know about, you can keep good monitoring and also blocking of those things as well. But also proxies are becoming a little bit harder because a lot of people are working from home and we don't have a corporate proxy at everyone's home. So being able to maybe get them to VPN in or to use a on-box proxy or a system or an EDR that does something like that is good as well. Yeah, I see a couple of those. Thanks, Jeffrey. All right. Malicious files on workstations. So how do we stop this stuff happening? So we have old antivirus, which did its job and is doing its job. We did have heuristics, which is kind of what EDR is, except for the R kind of response, being able to get the cleanliness or containing of a machine, really understanding the internal workings. It's kind of evolved into something that is a little bit more effective. Some of these organizations, I know Sophos, CrowdStrike, and maybe some others are, there's another one that I'm thinking, even the Microsoft Defender, you can get people behind them running those things as well. So having a 24/7 group of people, follow the sun group of people actually watching for problems and analyzing them as they go to augment just the telemetry. So, you know, and the artificial intelligence and the machine learning for this sort of thing can often stop malware in its tracks and can detect that kind of extraction of credentials or the key logging and that sort of activity without having a signature for that particular file. And then the analysis occurs and they're able to detect it. So having workstation protection is key as well, because that's typically and quite a lot of times the landing spot when we're talking about phishing and delivering MTET and things like that we talked about. We have application allow listing. So this is where nothing will run unless it's in a good list. This is the essential 8. If those are following, are familiar with that, this is the top 4 are sitting here. So this application allow listing means that you've got a list of signed applications, and if something comes along that is not part of that list, it just will not run, stops it dead, hard to deploy unless you've got you know, you've done it in a particular way. Yeah, very difficult, but to get something past that as well if it's done correctly. Limiting local admin rights is a major thing. So if you are a ransomware gang member and you get onto a box and you realize you have local admin rights, it is golden. You can pull out passwords from cache, you can pull out hashes, you can set up services, you can start scanning, you can install software, limiting what the person can do who's using that computer may be kind of limiting what they can do for work, but it actually protects the workstation from that sort of attack as well. Then patching the operating system, and I'm focusing on Windows here because this is, apart from those perimeter systems that might be the initial intrusion vector, patching Windows is very important. If you've got Windows systems on your corporate that have blue keep, that have eternal blue, or heaven forbid, you've got the WannaCry vulnerability, not the WannaCry, the kind of the spy bot crunching the MS 17010, but even before that, there was all of these, there was a lot of wormable vulnerabilities in Windows. If you've got those hanging around, sometimes you get people pulling a laptop out of a cupboard and going, oh, I haven't used this for a while, and they open it up and it's never been patched. You've got to constantly look for those things that are out there and can allow an attacker to get a foothold. And then obviously patching applications, browsers, PDF readers, Office apps. This is what some malware will use to get that foothold as well, and try and exploit vulnerabilities in these applications so they can execute some code. And obviously user behavior is important. General staff need to be trained. They need to be conscious of security. They need phishing. They might need phishing simulations. It's quite controversial. Doing that well will raise the knowledge of individuals in what they should do or not do or how to identify suspicious emails. You might want to target vulnerable or valuable staff as well. And I'll talk about that with those with special access. And you want to train them. And this, what is really important is train them to actually report issues to the service desk. If it's suspicious, train them, you know, if you get a screen that says this, report it straight away. If you see something's like antivirus popping up all the time, report it straight away. If you see MFA popping up all the time, report it. If you see something strange kind of authentication requests, report that as well. So it's important to get people to report. Over-reporting may be a problem, but if it's coming into the service desk and they are trained about what they know, that the help desk is aware of what cybersecurity attacks look like, then they'll be able to filter out and raise things up and alert the cybersecurity team quickly. Sometimes those minutes, those hours before there's a proper intrusion are the key times to actually get to stop that initial intrusion. The staff with special access, finance, HR have access to gobs of data. We want them to be particularly trained on transfers or requests for payroll changes, so they have special training. IT, obviously, because they can impact the entire organization with their IT access, and then executives obviously are enabled to authorize transfers, so they need to have some sort of training as well. So looking out for those groups that have special access or special privileges as well. Finally, I think on perimeter systems, we want to keep up on vendor advisories. Some of those big ransomware attacks occurred because they ignored or didn't get the vendor advisory or weren't looking out for them to get patched. Keeping that perimeter view is important. Third-party monitoring of, you know, what is happening on your external perimeter, or even setting up your own scanning to see what's opening or closing. Sometimes you have parts of IT that open up a service on the internet you never even knew about and didn't go through any sort of processes of approval. That's important as well. I have seen once in an organization I worked for, we had a blackout and the VMware the VMware host went down, and when it got fired up, they turned on all the servers again. But what they didn't know is that in those servers, there was actually decommissioned servers, and no one had marked them decommissioned. They just shut them down inside VMware. So when they came back up again, they turned them all on. Some of these very old servers became internet accessible. So we have to be watching our perimeter because things change all the time. VPN appliances, patching, Citrix, RDP, SSH, VNC, the things I've been talking about, making sure that they are patched. If they are externally accessible, it is dangerous if they are not regularly monitored and patched. And obviously web applications, not only the bespoke stuff that is written by your organization or by a organization or a web development company specifically for your organization, but the stuff that is off the shelf, it needs to be securely coded, and it also needs to be patched in the application stack. And this idea of no console access from the internet. Getting console access is a lot of privileges. Console, I mean like the Citrix RDP, the SSH VNC. If you get onto a box that is in your corporate from outside without the proper authentication and being able to prove who you are to the system, then that is dangerous as well. So we limit console access. Okay, and I think that's it. We've got a little bit over time, but I hope that was a good start to the ransomware course.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Just before we get into, there's a couple more questions. Do we have a little bit of time for a few more questions?
Sure. Yeah.
Just before we get into those, the material that is contained in this short course, if you're interested in it and you'd like to know more and go a little bit deeper, here's some examples of some additional short courses, as well as the actual full-length postgrad courses that IT Masters and Charles Sturt University offer, with some of the subjects on the right. Most of those subjects are available in the cybersecurity and cloud computing and virtualization courses that we offer. If you're interested in studying those, you can click on the link, which will be an approved link that Kit is going to drop in the chat at the moment to check your eligibility to study with us. Fill in the form if you're interested to know if you are eligible to study one of our courses, and I will give you a call and we can have a chat about the path forward for postgraduate study for you if you're interested. Thank you very much for all of that content, Jeremy. We've got a couple of questions. One is a policy question. So Bergie's asked, does the government have any policy in place on a diplomatic level to stop or question or demand action in another country? For instance, scams from places like India, Nigeria, etc., often countries that we are friendly with diplomatically.
Yeah, I think there's obviously the answer to that is it depends on the country. In some countries we'll have much closer ties. As you can imagine, some of our close allies would jump quickly if there was something serious that was requested amongst them. But obviously there are other countries that we don't have very good diplomatic relationships with, and probably wouldn't move as quickly or not at all. And it does, and the lines are drawn quite clearly there now. You know, in the kind of the geopolitical landscape, it's some relationships have degraded quite significantly, and some will be tighter as well. So you know, each country is sovereign. We can't kind of run in, you know, as Australia and demand certain things, but we can certainly appeal. And I believe there are joint task forces as well between some of those countries that cooperate together. So it's not a lost cause. But I think in the case of ransomware, we've seen a lot of this coming from Russia, and our kind of the legal arm into Russia, I don't believe is very strong, to put it nicely. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we've got a couple of questions about MFA. So Jeffrey said that in his organization, there are users who struggle with the use of MFA. Led to an admin overload on IT support to provide assistance to them.
Yeah, wow.
Are there any solutions that are as good but easier for users to struggle with using a digital app? They do have users who refuse to use their mobile number for SMS verification. And I suppose at its essence, this question is making it easier to verify, opening the door to an attack? Is the difficulty in verification actually kind of what makes it secure?
Yeah, the extra step. I think that I'm surprised that is the case. I know of organizations that have a very difficult time getting their users to take up multi-factor authentication. I've seen some of that, but it's been the vast kind of the minority, the really small minority that have had some issues with that. One thing I'll say is that making MFA easy to enroll and having the right guides and having you know, enough people when it's deployed to deliver MFA to the end users has been good. But also probably more important is the support from leadership. So if it's a top-down approach to multi-factor authentication, and there is a support from the CEO downwards, and it is mandated, it becomes much easier, certainly in a corporate. If you're dealing with a kind of a government, a local government, or an education provider, or a school or something like that, it might be much more difficult getting people to use their mobile phones to put an app on to do the MFA, but certainly is pretty much #1 these days for making sure your email stays safe, your VPNs stay safe, and your applications that give access to sensitive data remain safe as well. So I highly recommend persevering with it and figuring out those friction points and making it possible for people to come in. So some of that hurdle, there's no kind of security control that is perfect in terms of user experience. Usually when we're increasing security, we're actually increasing some hurdle for usability as well, which is a shame, but that is a function of putting the extra security in this case. So I think there's an element of truth in your suggestion there as well.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so Andrew has also asked verified impersonation resistant MFA. Actually, sorry, I'll pause for one moment and just let everybody know on the stream that we have closed the Q&A for now. If you do have any additional questions, please head to learn.itmasters.edu.au. We can find the forums for the short courses, as well as all of the recordings and other resources for the course overall. Sorry, in the middle of the question there. But yeah, verified impersonation resistant MFA looks to offer the most assurance. Is this something we need to get familiar with?
So I think it's an arms race, and it always has been with cybersecurity. So we started off with passwords. Passwords became mainstream. They started to deteriorate in their suitability for what we needed to use them for. We moved to maybe SMS, MFA, geo-blocking, then to apps for MFA, and now to more resistant MFA, and for WebAuthn and stuff like that, FIDO, and using the YubiKeys, and we're going to have to get sophisticated. The MFA we have will provide hurdles and make it more expensive for the attackers, because they won't be able to get as many access. But there is no end to this arms war that we are in with the attackers. There's not going to be one technology that's going to save us, because essentially when we use computers and when we have organizations of people that use computers, we are trusting them to do the right thing in those computers, and we can't lock them all up. That would mean is secure, but the fact is we have to allow people to use computers. So it's going to be a constant arms race, constant monitoring. We might get on top of it, but I don't think it's ever going to go away. It's always going to be moving.
Right, and I suppose that leads into the next question, which is just setting DKIM and DMARC, DMARC, better than SPF? Based on what I know, the anonymous attendee, I'll specify, not myself, SPF doesn't provide integrity.
No, so the idea is to use them all. So the SPF is quite basic, does provide some level of protection for verifying if it's coming from the right person, the right organization, but obviously domain keys are much better and more sophisticated, and can be less problematic with forwarding and things like that. DMARC's a whole different thing, and should be implemented for the purposes of making sure you're not imitated somewhere else and finding out about where you are. So the landscape of that should all be very clear, that we can implement them all in the various ways, in various levels of restriction. So prohibiting certain behaviors from certain email senders, but there's no reason not to implement them all.
Great, so horses for courses, really.
Well, I think I would encourage people to use them all in their corporate enterprise. So all the horses for every course.
A lot of horses, I see.
That's right. Yeah.
And Jeremy, did you submit a question? Because someone named Jeremy has asked if zero trust practice reduces the reliance on perimeter security. Yeah,
of course. I didn't submit that, but that's a good question. Zero trust is like the buzzword of 2022 and is kind of hailed as the pathway to getting on top of ransomware and general security issues. There is and the way zero trust has different definitions for everyone, and for a lot of vendors as well. And I think we do have to start thinking that way. But essentially, what it means is that we don't really think about the perimeter anymore. So from my understanding, we just need to be able to authenticate regardless of the location of the device accessing the application. And we take that kind of approach where we don't trust anything coming into the application. We require the re-authentication or require the extra security controls. So yes, we have to go in that direction. I don't think there's any other way. We can't still have a corporate with a soft perimeter. We'll be talking about it a lot, but the antithesis of zero trust is kind of this Active Directory that we have that trusts everything, and that is kind of the main hurdle for us as an industry going forward, to make sure this sort of thing isn't so easily perpetrated in the future. I hope I answered that a bit of a roundabout way.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that concludes our Q&A session. So thank you, everybody, for participating. Thank you very much, Jeremy, for such a fantastic first session of the Ransomware Techniques short course.
Okay.
Hopefully, we'll see everybody back here, same time and place next week. And that time is at 7:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, or the equivalent where you are. Again, all of the materials, including the recordings from this short course, can be found at learn.itmasters.edu.au. Please engage with the forums that are available on that site as well. Have discussions amongst yourselves. I believe Jeremy will also be engaging in that throughout the week. There will be more additional information about the logistics of the course, that is the certificates, the exam, and other kind of back end type of details will be provided in the next coming weeks. Hopefully we'll see everybody back here for the next one. I certainly know that I am interested to find out more about these other topics that have been mentioned. Thank you very much, everybody. And once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thank you.